So I just wanted to let you know that I did have some of you come up and had comments and also a couple of questions. I was able to capture the comment. We're still going to capture the questions. And if time allows, we'll be able to address those. Otherwise, what we'll do is get answers to those and get those out to you between this session and your next session. But thanks. And so if there are others and you didn't have an opportunity to come up, if you come up at the end, I'll be sure to capture all of them. Okay, we're going to keep going and look at Project 2030. I know that Missy and Roger went through that at a very high level last time, so now they'll be giving you more detail.
All right. So I think everyone has this on the back of their placemat right here. I'd just like to go over this with you in a little bit more detail. So this is our Project 2030 study schedule. So as you can see at the top half of the graphic, it shows, the various technical elements of the study, and then also the schedule. So we are currently, in the orange boxed areas. We're just starting off. The first at the top there, we have document scanning, asset inventory, and demand forecast. So that's what we are currently working on at our office and at Roger's office. And then down below on the easel there, we're at workshop number 1. So this is going to be a very important tool to use throughout this whole study. It has some really good information. So at Exactly. So as you can see at workshop number 1, there's no document listed down below on the easel. But as we move through these workshops, there's various documents listed. And that's really going to be homework for you all in the coming workshop. So, and there might even be some tests. So just joking. But there will be some documents for you all to review. So really what we want to do tonight is to go through the various elements of the study, and as we go through those elements, we want to talk about what that element is, but then also how you, the CAC members, are involved. So you're aware, hey, when we get to this point, this is what I will be doing. So keep this handy and refer to it often. If you have any questions, please let us know. Just go through. So to go over our scope in a little more detail, I'm just going to list out the various scoping items. These are all of our deliverables that we'll be presenting to you all. So the top item is our asset inventory deliverable, and really this is the one item that you won't be participating in. All the other ones you will be providing input. That item is pretty much complete. That's why it's a little bit darker than the others. That was our first task, and we'll go over that in a little more detail what we did. The next item is our future water demand projections. So as you can see, that's partially highlighted. We are currently working on that, and Roger with Harris will talk about that in a little more detail later. And then the other future tasks that we have that are also listed on your various workshops and on your schedule is our water main assessment and costs, our water main replacement phasing plan, and then we'll be looking at funding strategies and doing a rate analysis as well. And then finally, we'll be doing an implementation plan. As you can see on the right, we have the public engagement. So we plan to engage with the public, the customers, including the customer advisory committee. We have various meetings that we're attending, and we plan to do that throughout this whole process. So we want to make sure that our customers are informed and provide input to us so we make the best decisions possible. All right, I'd like to go over the first task that we worked on, and that is our asset inventory task. And like I said, there's really no huge role for the CAC. This is more data gathering on our part. So one of the goals of this asset inventory is to add key data to the district's geographic information system water facility map. So we have this great GIS map, and it has some good information, but it's not completely populated. So that's one of the keys to this whole project. This is going to be the foundation for our study. We will use this map for further steps along the way. So the first task, just so you know what we had to do, it was fun stuff. We had to go through all of our project files. So we had a lot of drawers to go through. And these are, our staff back here, Tamar and Paul and others. We went through all of our files, and luckily we have some great records, and we pulled out those key as-builts. And so what's an as-built? It's basically a map with some of our inspectors, writing notes, and it shows exactly what's in the ground. So in the back, on the back table there, we have some examples of our as-built, so you can, if you want to take a look at it, feel free. It's pretty interesting. At least I think it is. I'm an engineer, though. So that was kind of the first thing we did. And this took several months to go through all of our files. So I'm very pleased that we completed that task. So the next task was scanning our documents. So we had over 1,000 documents to scan. So this is Tamar on scan number 1. He's really happy right here. And this is Tamar on scan number 1,000. Not so happy. But joking aside, all those documents did get scanned, and we have all those digitally now, which is huge because, it's always kind of scary having these paper documents, which, it's great information, but if we ever had a fire or a flood or something, now I feel pretty secure that, we have all of our data. So once all those documents were scanned, someone has to go through them, right, and figure out what kind of pipe is that? When was it installed? So we have Harris, they have a sub-consultant that is doing that work for us. They're going through all the documents. I think they have some pretty nifty software, too, that helps them. And it identifies the installation year and the pipe material for the various pipelines. And they're inputting that into our GIS system. And so as you can see those columns, we want to get all those populated. A lot of them were blank, and now they're going to be populated with that data. And then one other thing we're doing is what we call creating project polygons. So all of these as-builts, there's a project limit to the project. So what we're having our consultant do is create these polygons to identify the limits of the project. And they put that on our GIS map, and back there you'll see we have a water book that we put that information on as well. So when our crews are out in the field and, there's a water main break and they're digging it up and they're trying to figure out, what's the outside diameter of a pipeline, they can go to their computer, go to their map, go to the polygon, click on it, and up pops our as-built. We're attaching all those plans to our digital map. So that's going to be very useful for the crews out in the field, because right now they got to go back to the office, try to find that file, and then make a copy of it, take it out. Now it'll all be digital. So that's a pretty nice thing to have. And then the last thing we're doing is obviously quality assurance, quality control. As we're getting this data back from our consultants, we're reviewing it. All of our staff is reviewing it to make sure the data is accurate. And then we go back and forth and let them know if there's any issues. So we're currently working on that as well. So once again, luckily, you guys have no role in this piece. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Roger, and he's going to talk about a few of the other tasks.
Thank you, Missy. So one of the important initial tasks, what we will be doing is looking at water demand projections looking into the future. And I think the graph that David had put together here kind of tells a really telling story here, because in addition to, the various impacts, whether it's been drought, whether it's been meter installation, but there's obviously been a clear impact and response by the customers here to those changing conditions, as shown by the declining water use. While at the same time, you can see from the gray bars that, actual area served has been increasing. And so, again, that just shows, the public responding to those changes in water consumption. And so looking forward here as part of this study will be to actually project what that's going to be, let's say in the year 2040 or 2050. And so in addition to just area served, one of the other things that we will be taking into consideration is land use and zoning, and looking at areas that are perhaps lower density now, or maybe lots of open space or so. Those may become developed, and you may have a much higher density development there in the future. So all of that will get worked into projections. And so really the challenge for us is going to be, and so what the illustration there to the right shows, different projections, different crystal balls looking into the future. Are we anticipating that water demand may go up? It could actually stay flat just through kind of continued conservation by folks and increased technology, and there's been a real push here across the state for, lowering both indoor and outdoor water use, so that could actually help drive that down. Or even the more extreme, and that would certainly be extreme, but if you were to just follow that projection down. So that's part of the work that we will be doing here to kind of look ahead to see, what quantities of water are we talking about, and then when we're replacing pipelines, what size pipelines might that entail. So this, I would say, kind of shifting from demand forecast into the water main assessment. And this is probably, at the core, at the crux of everything that you've heard here tonight, and I think what we're going to hear before, but this is really a function about risk. And so, and I think in our everyday lives, and I think we have an exercise that we're planning on having here in a little bit, but we deal with risk in our everyday lives and everyday decisions. And so for a water district, and when we're looking at water mains, it's really about the likelihood of failure and consequence of failure. And I think Missy, some of her photos that she had shown what a water main break looks like. I think if those of you can remember when they had the large water main break in Poly Pavilion down at UCLA and flooded out the wood floor there, that would basically would be a 9,000 perhaps, on that scale of 9. So I mean, that was the ultimate in terms of, high consequence and a likelihood because the pipe was so old. And so, and I won't repeat these factors here because I think Missy covered them very well, but again, it's looking both at the likelihood of failure and as well as what the consequence of failure is. And so, from there, then when we start developing cost estimates, then it will entail, all of these elements here for cost estimating. And we'll be looking at that, I think, also from both the transmission mains, which are sort of the heart of carrying the water throughout the system, as well as the distribution mains, which run down your street and this street and there and kind of gets the water to each of their homes. And each one of those serves a vital function. But, the total cost for that, goes into not only just, what is the pipe material and the pipe size, but also, the labor, the method of construction, whether it's done by an open trench or there's some newer, trenchless technology. So all of that will factor into our cost estimate. And when we talk about phasing, there are different ways to look at that. I mean, we can look at, let's take care of the high-risk pipelines projects first and go to low risk. Maybe we look at the transmission mains, then we go to distribution mains. To me, probably the simplest way of looking at that is if we look at it almost from what percent of renewal do we do? Are we going to try and replace, if we know all these mains are going to be coming, of age, do we try and replace 1% a year? Do we try and replace 1.5% or 2% a year? And that phasing then kind of defines how much funding and how many resources are going to be required to do that. And that's really the balancing act here that we're dealing with. What is the input that would be required to do that from a phasing standpoint, revenue or bonds? And what is the output? What is it going to take to actually do it? That requires staffing, both internally and perhaps externally. There's different project delivery. You've got the construction industry. I mean, all of that, you know, we have to come up with a plan that is actually manageable. And so what this is, and not expecting everybody to memorize all of this, but when we are developing these options, we're going to be looking at ranges that range, uh-oh, I pressed the wrong button here. Well, I don't know what I just did. So along the horizontal axis where we look at, I think somebody had asked a question about, you know, cash pay as you go, you know, rate financing versus debt financing, but then also phasing options, you know, in the vertical axis. And, you know, again, that can be, do we accelerate main replacement? Do we, you know, spread it out over a longer period of time? And then with each of those, then we can run different financial rate analyses and models and come up with, you know, what is the impact here to the community. And with that, I'm gonna
All right, so once you know, the funding options are determined, we will have our financial consultant, Ralph Tellis, do a district-wide rate model. And so really what that is determine what our rates will be based on the various options we give them. So we'll be working with all of you to come up with these various options, and then probably 5 or so, and then we'll give those to our consultant, and then they'll come back with some different rate options so that we can look at. So really, our rates consist of, you know, we have a base rate. Our base rate is everything shown in the blue. You know, we have salary and benefits. We have our operations and maintenance. This is that pie chart that Susan was showing earlier. Those are all these items. Our funds and reserves, and then all of our non-Project 2030 capital improvement program projects, such as the wells that we talked about, and then also the meter replacements. So all those items would be in the blue. And then up above in the orange is Project 2030, which is essentially water main replacements, right? So we don't really know which way we're going yet, but there's probably going to be a rate change associated with that. But depending on what is selected, you know, we may do the pay-as-you-go approach, or we may do the debt service, or maybe a combination of the two. So the shape of that orange bar really is just a graphic right now, but it's depending on what we pick, it's going to change. But this is just a good model, I think, to show you really what our rates are made of. And this will be over a course of, you know, the study period. It's not going to be 10 years. It's actually going to be longer than that. It's probably going to be more like a 30-year rate study. So another key item of the study is our implementation plan. You know, as we've said, we don't want the study to just sit on the shelf. We'll be identifying tasks to be performed now and in the future, and that's what Roger and you all will be helping us with. What tasks do we need to include in this study? So once this study is done, we just don't put it on the shelf. There's some examples of implementation plan. Maybe it's we have a list of transmission mains that we know we want to replace, and we have them prioritized. But which ones do we really replace first? We don't know. Well, maybe there's a task that we have to do some further investigation on our water mains. Maybe we have to do some additional condition assessments. So that's an example of maybe a task that we have to do after the study is complete. And I think the key here is to note that the implementation plan may change the study a little bit. It's not going to change it significantly, but it may tweak the results a little bit. And that's the great thing about this computer software that we have and the rate analysis model that we have. We can tweak it a little bit. So it's just important to note that the implementation plan will assist us moving forward. And last but not least, obviously, is our public engagement piece. It's really our engagement strategy. As you can see, there's a number of ways we engage with the public, and one of the huge ways we're doing that is by employing this customer advisory committee. You know, you all are representation of the district, of our customers, and your input is very important, and that is a key component to this strategy. But it's not all of it. You know, there's other pieces. We have the social media strategy. We do have Facebook. We have, you know, we're recording this for YouTube, so people can look at this, and, you know, if they have any comments, come to us. As a part of this study, we're also doing a little bit of market research. We have a consultant that will be contacting customers and asking them questions and getting feedback. So really, that's a key piece too. So if we get feedback that people aren't, you know, maybe they're just not sure of how we're going, maybe that's a point where we, you know, come back to you all, or we decide we need to have some additional public meetings to make sure everyone's, you know, informed and they provide the appropriate feedback. So we can make the best decisions possible. You know, we are really just the keepers of the district. We work for the district, but you all own our system. So we're really working for you on this. So with that, I think we have a little activity. I'm going to go back. I'll pass it
Thanks.
on to Laura.
We can go to the next slide. One of the things we wanted to do was to bring this closer to home for each of us. And so I'd like you to envision a major purchase or investment that you have either made or that you are thinking of making. So perhaps it's a new car. Maybe if you own a home, it's a new air conditioning or heating system. If you have a child, maybe it's a college degree that you're thinking of investing in. Whatever it is, just take a moment. Think of a major investment or purchase you've made, or know you're going to want to make, or maybe not even want to, but need to in the next few years. So does everyone have something they can think of? Okay, would you now get together with the people at your table, and would you talk about how did you or will you analyze the risk? So if we go back to the risk formula, the likelihood of failure if you don't make this purchase, or if you didn't make this purchase, times the consequence of failure if you don't or didn't, if it was a past one. How did you make a decision on what you were going to do and when you were going to do it? So just have a chance. We just want to bring this very close to home, because we all do this kind of thing with major investments or decisions. So let's take about 3 or 4 minutes in your group, and you can share what it is and how you did or how you will make that decision.
I've been in my house.
There's evidence that it broke here,
But it's not my, so that's the last of those. That's not my product. You know, you just whittle away at it, because we've just almost 50 years. Whittle away at it over time. Oh, you're right, that's not there, but it needs to be done. Always. Always.
how do you do it?
Or something in it.
We aren't going to go around the entire table, but could we just get a few of the factors that you take into consideration, or that you took into consideration if you're thinking of something that happened in the past? Just a few from some of you. Yes?
Safety was the main consideration.
Okay, safety. So you can see how that applies here, too. What else? Some of the things that you took into consideration or will take into consideration to make a decision.
How long will it last?
Pardon?
How long things will last?
How long things will last, okay.
Well, and the consequences of if you don't do it,
Okay, so the consequences if you don't.
like a new roof.
Yes, like a new roof. Others?
Reliable,
Reliability, okay.
If you have a backup system available,
So is there a backup? Much like if all the water mains broke, what would you do if you had no water?
that's the loop system.
Or even if one major one for your area, what would you do?
Cry.
Accelerate phasing.
You'd call the water district, Missy says. Of course.
backing on other projects.
Pardon, and if you speak into the mic.
Piggybacking on other projects. So that, like you said, if we were needing a new roof, maybe that's also the time to be putting in the fan into the attic or other vents, so that you've got all the projects instead of it having to be,
Take advantage of the opportunity.
So incorporating these other things.
so.
So it sounds like did we have one more over there?
Yeah, I was thinking, for our group, it was about timing, that if you,
Okay.
if you buy it now, it's a certain cost, but if you wait, the cost will go up.
Probably isn't going down. Right.
It also goes down.
So, so it sounds like all of the things that you talked about are very relevant to what you as a CAC will be looking at with the water main replacement project, these same kinds of factors. So we allocated time on the agenda for public comment. I do not see any public. So I think we have about 5 minutes where we could capture any more questions that you had. And I know that, James, you had a comment that you shared during the break, and I just think you could more eloquently share that than I can paraphrase what you told me. So perhaps if you would mind sharing that. And then I know we had a couple of other questions just to add to the list.
No, the one point that I was making is that we've got two items here. We've got to make sure we keep them separate. The meters and the mains. Those are two separate items. And residents of the city, the people that I know, are going to deal with those in two different ways. When we start talking about the mains, and I've been through this with the Measure K that we went through, trying to get the city put back together again, and nobody wanted to listen, but primarily we were talking too technical, and we were talking at a level people didn't want to hear. You have to get down to the nitty-gritty and explain to them the downside, the dark side of what happens. Meters, that's one thing. That's a whole separate thing. But the mains that have been they've been in service now 60, maybe 50, 60 years or whatever. This is a condition that we know is going to fail. And do the people of Citrus Heights, do they really want to let them fail? Because either way, they're going to be on your bill. Replacing all the mains is going to be on your bill, some way or shape or another. It's going to be there. You're going to pay for it. If they fail, you're paying overtime, double time, shifts in here trying to fix the thing, plus you're out of water for 5, 10 days maybe. You almost have to paint a bad picture so that they understand what the downside of not doing this. Because if you get in there and start telling them, you're giving them a bunch of technical stuff and explaining to them how the main works and how this coming from the river and the history, that's great. But they're not going to understand that. What they're going to understand is what might happen. And once they understand what might happen, then you can explain to them what we think we're going to do in stages to keep it from ever happening. And this is what the cost is going to be. And it may not be the exact cost, but it's going to be somewhere close, and we're going to explain to them somehow it's going to wind up on your bill, no matter what happens. Now, when you want to talk meters, that's a whole nother thing. You just got done saying the meters are 25 or 20 years, 20-year meters. Mine went in 05. That means, or 06. I don't have to wait. I don't have to worry.
So right now, we're focused on the water mains.
No, I know, but I'm just saying,
So-
that's why when we were looking up here, this whole presentation so far, we've been talking, those have been thrown in there every once in a while. I noticed one of the emails that I got actually all of a sudden said, and meters. I don't like that, and meters added on. That's a whole nother thing that we can talk about, but it has nothing to do with the mains. The main is an important issue. It's an issue that's going to come at us big, and the city doesn't understand it, and people don't understand it. And to try to explain to them about how water works, they're not going to understand that. I don't understand it. I don't know anything about it. I know I turn the faucet on and water comes out. That's all I want to know. I don't want any technical stuff about how the water gets here.
Okay.
What I want people to understand is what happens with age, and they'll understand this because we have a very old society here in Citrus Heights. They're all going to understand what happens with age. You got to make that point to them so that they start to realize this is an important issue.
So it needs to be very relevant to them
Yes, you
personally
gotta
in
beat 'em
ways
over
that
the
they
head,
can
beat them over the head
understand.
with it, and then, maybe the light will go on. Otherwise, you're not going to get them to agree to anything, and then we're going to wind up jacking their bill up, and you better have a lot of phones and a lot of people to answer phone calls because they're going to be calling you.
Great, thank you. How about, are there other questions? Yes.
Well, a little bit of a piggyback on what he said, but then also a comment that I would like to make. I think people do get it. I really do. And I don't think the hard sell is convincing people that you need to replace infrastructure. I think the hardest part is going to be, and I think it's going to be self-explanatory, when you put those maps out about where your leaks are, and you've got a quadrant up here that has had constant repair, that's going to be obvious to anybody that should probably be where you put your first effort. And I think this is kind of reflecting what you were trying to get at. How do we solve problems? And I kind of think that the priority and the need for it is why we're all here. And then those maps, I'm really interested in seeing your asset maps. I'm really interested in seeing the maps showing where your leaks are, where the ages are, what the kinds of structure, what material is in those pipes, because that will also be a major clue. If you had something like Orangeburg pipes, you would know you need to replace them right away. They're probably all broken anyway. But your steel pipes may have a longer lasting. If they're not the ones showing high repair rates right now, then that area can be put off to perhaps another level of priority. So I think some of the information that's going to be coming out of the information that the chart that you put up there is almost going to be self-explanatory. You're going to look at it and you're going to go, oh my gosh. It's kind of like looking at a roof with shingles coming off. It doesn't, I don't think it's going to take a rocket scientist, and I'm hoping that what you will get out of it is a good consensus from us based on that data, because if your data is that nebulous that nobody can decide where the priority is, that's going to be a problem itself. It should come out that data and priority that you're looking for from us will almost be self-explanatory. At least that's been my experience in looking at other things and things around the house. You put your hand up to the window and you feel air coming through, you know you got to get those double pane things in, or if you're leaking. I just see that more of life is not as hard as we may be making it out to be. I would like to, though, bring up one other thing.
Okay, and then we'll have the rest of you, if you would, come up afterwards, and I'll capture those questions so that we can move on to your chair and vice chair. So do you need to, or could you come up at the end and we'll capture that question?
I think it might be something of general interest, and I'll just leave it. I don't need to discuss it a lot. But you mentioned that we water wheel 10,000 acre-feet of water, selling it off, and then yet you say we need to build new wells. Now, we know the state's in an overdraft situation. Why are we building or even trying to budget for new wells at this point if we're selling off 10,000 acre-feet? 1 acre-feet of water will feed a family of 5 per year. So that's a lot of water and a lot of people that water would take care of for us locally. So the idea of selling it, I'm sure, is not. Anyway, I'm proselytizing now. It's just, that just struck me as strange. We're talking about building new wells, and that's going to cost us money, but then we're selling 10,000 acre-feet, water wheeling it? Oh my gosh. Okay. I just have lots of questions, so I'm going to leave it.
Good question, and thank you so much for it. Yes, our groundwater program is a major commitment that we have been very long involved with and continue to move forward with. The hydrologic conditions vary widely in our region, and there are different scenarios that allow us to be able to sell off on 1 year excess water but in another year we may very well need it. And in fact, that very scenario where we had to rely on our groundwater came about very recently with this drought, where our surface water supplier, San Juan Wholesale, did not have the water fully needed to serve its area during the very, very low portion of the drought. And so they actually asked us to pump groundwater uphill to our residents, essentially, so that they didn't have to bring so much water down to us. So the reason that we develop those groundwater wells is for supply reliability and stability, and ultimately it may also play into price stability, because one of the things we know is that the price keeps going up of surface water. Right now, the financial plan for San Juan shows some fairly significant rate increases that we're going to be passed on to us. And so those price points for the unit cost of groundwater production and surface water production continue to come closer and closer. And there may come a point when we need to blend in more groundwater to help to smooth out some of those expenses, if you will, and to slow down those rate increases over an extended period of time. So it's a long-term and strategic investment on our part. It's not something that we necessarily realize the full benefits of immediately, but it puts us in a really good position for the future.
Thank you, Hillary. Okay, so if the other questions, if I could ask you after the meeting just to give those to me, then I'll get them on the list. All right, we're moving on to your electing your chair and vice chair. And you'll recall at the last meeting we talked about the roles of the chair and vice chair. And I think you have that in the slide. And so we have 4 people who've indicated an interest. And so we would like to have them just take a minute to tell us what their interest is in becoming the chair or vice chair, so that you can all have a sense of who's interested, and then we will do a ballot and capture your votes. So let's see, who would like to go first? All right, great.
My name's Jenna Moser. I have over 17 years experience in attending and participating in public hearings and public meetings for City Council and Planning Commission, literally hundreds of meetings. I understand the value of public participation, and I will be respectful of the committee's comments and time, keeping the agenda moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Who would like to go next?
My name's Rick Moses, and just my background has been I've been in the military for 24 years, and I was also a high school teacher for the last 12 years. And I'm basically fairly good at working with people and working with groups. And that, as I said, we can work on whatever agenda is going on and keeping us on time, and basically working with people and each other and keeping things flowing. Thank you.
Mike, do you want to go next?
I might. I'm Mike Nishimura. I've served on several boards before. I was more interested in the vice chair position, but I have to come in second place. So I would encourage you to vote for your person. The ideal situation for me would be for the other members to vote for me and you vote for who you want. But that was my primary thing, was that I wanted to step in as vice chair just to do my part and be active in the CAC.
Great, thank you so much, Mike.
Oh, is that coming through?
It's on.
I'm David Wheaton. As I had mentioned before in my introduction, I was Public Works Director here for 15, 16 years, and I see this project as part of the transformation of this community, Citrus Heights specifically, becoming a city and what it's become over those last nearly 20 years that we've been incorporated. I like to see this element, this part that has been missing from part of that transformation become just as important as this building that we built, or the city hall that we built, or the roads that we built, because I think it's very important. And I think it's important too, which has always been a part of what I've tried to instill in my staff, with my staff, and as a fundamental aspect of what we try to accomplish, that there's a collaboration. I don't mean through public hearings, I mean through real collaboration as we have represented around this table. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So you have in front of you, I believe all of you have a ballot, correct? So would you please choose the candidate that you would like to have as your CAC chair, and be sure to sign the bottom of the ballot. We will capture those, and then while we're going through the agenda for the next session, Chris Castruda and Madeline Henry will be tabulating your votes. So
I just wanted to quickly clarify that the person who wins the plurality of the vote will be elected our chairperson. The person who gets the second most votes would be elected our vice chair. In the event of a need for a runoff where there is a tie, we do have additional ballots, and so we would conduct additional voting. Hopefully that will not be needed this evening.
thanks. So we'll come around and gather your ballots, and just to give time to tabulate those ballots, why don't we go around and capture just one thing that you're taking away from today, or if you have a question you would like to add to the list. So just a very quick takeaway and or a question you would like to add to the list. Once we do have the results on the vote, then we will share those and just look at the agenda for next time. So anyone can start who wants to, and then we'll just go around the table from there. So a takeaway or a question? Yes, Mike.
I was wondering, can you put together some kind of layman's terms, a glossary with acronyms? What's a transmission main? Has no idea what,
Could you start from the top, because we're not capturing you.
Can you put together some kind of glossary, or, with acronyms, what it is, a transmission main, what are the materials that they've used in the past, just so that for quick reference when we're sitting here, okay, what's a transmission main?
Great.
What's a GIS, things like that. Would that be possible?
Yes. So we'll make sure that that gets done. Also know that all of the slides from tonight will be put on the website, so you'll have everything from tonight that you can refer to in detail. But definitely we can put together a list of terms. And if you'd like to just pass the mic, then just a takeaway or a question that you have. And let's hear from everyone.
I wanted to thank the gentleman that had the table arranged back there with some of the GIS data and the map books and stuff. That's a great job. I can't wait to see some of the cartography that comes out of your project.
I think this is a third meeting for everybody.
And talk loudly into the mic, if you would.
Ever has ceased to amaze me coming to these meetings.
And could you hold the mic up, because we can't all hear?
How articulate and thoughtful everybody in here is. It's pretty amazing, and I'm really enjoying being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so please, everyone, if we could just hear a takeaway or a question. So if you don't have a question, if you would just share one thing you're taking away or that you learned tonight.
I'm also appreciative of the time and effort that you guys have put into this, into educating us regarding the process that's going to follow. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
The only takeaway I have is I'm really looking forward to getting into this process and into the meat of it.
Great, thank you.
Well, I've been where you are many, many times, and I know you do all of this preparation while still doing your jobs. So I appreciate you, and I know you've just done great, and I'm really looking forward and I'm excited about being on this project.
Okay. First takeaway I have is that I'm waiting for James to come to me and say, the pipes are as old as you, and are you breaking down? Just joking with you. I kind of get your point. It's nice to know a little bit more depth and background to the district and see where we're going, and I'm just interested in where we go further with this.
Great, thank you.
I enjoyed the history lesson of the water district and how it developed over the years, and knowing and finding out where our water does actually come from between the wells and the lake.
Great, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you. You guys are amazing. I am starting to learn something, which is hard to believe if you know me. Other than that, I do have a question, and this is something we can talk about later. The budget. I'm a small business owner. We have a $20 million budget. 21% of it goes to salaries and benefits. I'm sure that probably includes other things like the crews and stuff that are working. I'm just curious because that's a really big number. So I was just curious, and we can get to that later because I'm sure you'll break it down. Thank you.
And I didn't hear the last part of the question. So then the number for the budget for salary and expenses.
Right, because the budget's 20 million.
Right.
21 point whatever percent, that's 4.4 million in salary for 34 people, which I don't believe is that. But I'm sure there's a lot more goes into it, and I'd like to see you guys, how you break that down, because that would be awesome. I'd like to work here if that was true. I'm kidding, I know it's not. I'm just curious, that's all.
Great, thank you.
So I greatly appreciated the history lesson and also the fact that you are working on a complete population of the GIS with the water facility map. I really want to see like every little pinpoint of where all of our pipes and things are. I'm really interested in that.
I appreciated the demo. It gave us something to talk about here at the table.
And it looked like it was fun to put all of that together. And personally, I have no desire to go dig in my yard and find out what mine looks like. This is really nice. On a history perspective, I was kind of looking forward to see a piece of that redwood pipe. But again, the history of the area, that's so much of what we deal with today in so many aspects of our lives. So thank you very much. And this was very interesting.
I'm a visual person, so I do appreciate the visual prop here that we get to see of what it looks like, and to the pipe, and also under getting a better idea of the challenges we are going to be facing and how we're best going to pay for the replacement of the water main and meters. So we've got some ideas. So anyway, some challenges ahead of us.
I'm very pleased to see the tremendous job staff does in preparing for these meetings. I know they do the same thing for us every month. It doesn't surprise me. This is about what I would expect from the people I get to watch every month. So this is not unique to this setting, but I'm very proud of them for putting something together that's that effective. And I'm very pleased to see the quality of the CAC here and the thoughtful comments and the depth and breadth of knowledge that you're bringing to this to give us some effective advice when we make these decisions that affect people for the next 50 years. And I appreciate what I'm seeing from the staff, and I appreciate very much what I see from all of you who are giving up your time tonight.
I too very much enjoyed the history portion of tonight and how Sylvan Cemetery was involved.
It was in cemetery. There was a schoolhouse. It's going to be an interesting trip, no matter what happens. But like I said, most people are going to come down to looking at the dollars, and I look at dollars. I'm interested. I like to see the ins and the outs, and so it'll be fascinating. It'll be a fascinating ride to see how we're going to get to this point, how much it's going to cost, and how we're going to do that. I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah, great, thanks.
The staff work, I'm not surprised. I think it's more expected, and you get out of them the best of the best, and so I'm real proud of that. I have a lot of questions that have to do with the asset inventory and also the decline of water use and how that all factors into the decline of revenue and what that means for this overall financial picture.
So I kind of have more of a comment on the wells, and I don't know what the proximity can be to the existing well that I think you mentioned is over here, San Juan, kind of Greenback, Mariposa area. But that property that was that kind of dilapidated property that they just took possession of, the pumpkin farm on Old Auburn and Mariposa, that guy hasn't decided what he wants to do with the property, and I believe that it's large enough to probably use a half acre for a well. That was my only thought.
Great, thanks.
I think the proceedings tonight have been wonderful. I really enjoyed the oatmeal cookies. And Chris, who's the winner?
So with 9 votes this evening, Ms. Jenna Moser will be our chair. And with 8 votes this evening, Mr. David Wheaton will be our vice chair.
Okay, well, congratulations. Let's look at our next meeting, and that will be on August 28th. And you can look at the back of your placemat to see, or you can look at the screen, even better. So you can see that it will be, again, at 6:30, and it will be here. And you can see on the back of your placemat that the topics will be the main replacement basics. So again, you're getting a lot of the background information. We're continuing to build the foundation of understanding, introduction to utility benchmarking, and also the asset inventory results, which I know several of you are very curious about. And we'll also have answers to any of the questions that you identified tonight that we have not yet been able to answer here, if you come up and give those to me at the end of the meeting. And I think, Missy, are you going to talk about the strategic planning meeting? Did I understand from Hillary that you are doing that?
Sure. We do have a strategic planning meeting that's scheduled for Tuesday, July 17th, and I believe you all are invited. So I believe you already received the invitations via email, or will be receiving the invitations via email. Sorry, I'm kind of winging this. But the strategic planning meeting scheduled for 8 to 12 for the CAC members, and then after that, staff will continue on with the process. And the location of that meeting is by the, it's the Regional Water Authority boardroom, which is by the El Tapatio. Trying to get a landmark there that you all recognize. There's an office building right behind that in that old parking lot. And that will be at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, July 17th. More information will be forthcoming. We hopefully you can attend.
So again, as Missy said, you're all invited, and we'll be actively involved in the morning session. And then all that information will feed into what the board and the staff then continue to work on priorities. And if you wanted to stay and join the audience for that second half, you'd be welcome to do so also. So, all right, well, I think we are at the end of our session. And so let me get the gavel. Let's give it to our chair, and she can close our meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in August. With that, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Great, thank you.